voice. Welcome back to XRP Macro, your trusted source for the latest XRP news, Ripple updates, crypto market analysis, and price predictions. Today we have a major story that could shape the next chapter for XRP. Ripple continues expanding across the world with more than 75 regulatory licenses. The crypto industry is watching the upcoming Clarity Act closely, and XRP's chart is flashing technical signals that many analysts have been waiting months to see. At the same time, shrinking XRP supply, rising trading volume, and improving market structure are bringing fresh attention back to the digital asset. Some analysts believe the next major breakout could already be forming, while others say confirmation is still needed before celebrating. In today's report, we'll break down Ripple's global expansion, the latest legal and regulatory developments, what the charts are really saying, why institutional investors are paying attention again, and where XRP could be headed next. Make sure you stay with us until the end, because several important signals are lining up at exactly the same time, and together they could define XRP's direction over the coming weeks. One of the biggest stories surrounding Ripple right now is something that many investors are overlooking. While headlines continue focusing on the Clarity Act and Washington politics, Ripple itself has not been standing still. Instead, the company has continued executing its long-term strategy across multiple continents. According to crypto researcher Crypto Crusader, the real story is not simply whether lawmakers approve another crypto bill. The bigger picture is that Ripple has already spent years building the infrastructure that institutions will eventually need. Rather than waiting for regulations to catch up, Ripple has been securing licenses, expanding payment networks, strengthening relationships with financial institutions, and positioning XRP for global adoption. This approach means that whenever regulatory uncertainty finally begins to disappear, Ripple may already be miles ahead of many competitors. Investors focusing only on short-term headlines may be missing years of preparation that have quietly been taking place behind the scenes, and that preparation could eventually become one of Ripple's biggest competitive advantages. Ripple's regulatory footprint has become one of the strongest in the digital asset industry. The company now holds more than 75 licenses and registrations around the world, giving it access to key financial markets across Europe, Japan, Australia, the United Kingdom, Singapore, the United Arab Emirates, Africa, and the United States. These approvals are not just symbolic achievements. They represent years of compliance work, cooperation with regulators, and efforts to build trust within traditional finance. Financial institutions often move slowly when adopting new technologies, but regulatory certainty helps reduce many of their concerns. Every additional license strengthens Ripple's credibility as a company focused on long-term institutional growth rather than short-term speculation. As global payment systems continue modernizing, Ripple has positioned itself to participate in that transformation. Instead of racing to catch up once regulations become clearer, Ripple appears determined to ensure that much of its foundation has already been completed before the largest wave of institutional demand eventually arrives. Crypto Crusader argues that Ripple's current strategy reflects something much bigger than simply winning legal battles. In his view, Ripple is planting the seeds for institutional XRP adoption well before the Clarity Act becomes law. Rather than waiting for politicians to finalize every regulation, the company has continued investing in partnerships, infrastructure, licensing, and payment solutions that could eventually support large-scale financial activity. This perspective suggests that today's groundwork may produce tomorrow's growth. Large financial institutions rarely adopt completely new technologies overnight. They often spend years evaluating systems before implementation. Ripple appears to understand this reality and has been building those relationships long before broader regulatory clarity arrives. If those preparations eventually align with favorable legislation, many investors believe XRP could benefit from an environment where institutions already know Ripple, already trust its infrastructure, and already have existing relationships that can be expanded much more quickly than starting from scratch. Another major catalyst approaching later this year is Ripple Swell 2026, which will be held alongside the XRPL Apex Developer Summit from October 27th through October 29th in New York. Bringing these two major events together has significantly increased expectations throughout the crypto community. Ripple Swell traditionally attracts executives from major banks, payment companies, financial technology firms, and policymakers, while XRPL Apex brings developers and innovators building directly on the XRP ledger. Combining both communities into one large event creates opportunities for collaboration, announcements, partnerships, and product launches that many believe could strengthen the Ripple ecosystem. Investors will be watching closely for updates involving institutional payment solutions, stablecoin development, cross-border transactions, decentralized finance applications, tokenization initiatives, and enterprise blockchain adoption. Large conferences often become launching pads for strategic partnerships, and this year's combined event may represent one of Ripple's biggest opportunities to showcase how much progress has been made since previous gatherings. Meanwhile, the crypto industry continues watching developments surrounding the proposed Clarity Act. The legislation is designed to establish clearer definitions regarding which digital assets qualify as securities and which should instead fall under different regulatory frameworks. For years, uncertainty has created hesitation among financial institutions, developers, and investors alike. Many companies have delayed expansion plans because they lacked confidence about future regulatory treatment. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse has repeatedly stated that XRP itself already achieved legal clarity following Ripple's courtroom victory against the SEC. However, he also emphasizes that the broader crypto industry still needs comprehensive legislation to create consistent rules for everyone. Without those clear standards, innovation inside the United States may continue facing unnecessary obstacles. Many industry participants believe legislation like the Clarity Act could encourage greater investment, stronger institutional participation, and increased confidence across the entire digital asset market rather than benefiting only one company or one cryptocurrency. Crypto Crusader shares a similarly optimistic outlook regarding what could happen once broader regulatory clarity finally arrives. He believes Ripple has already completed much of the difficult work by building infrastructure, securing licenses, and preparing enterprise-grade solutions before the legislation is finalized. According to this viewpoint, once uncertainty begins fading, there may be very little preventing institutions from expanding their use of Ripple's technology. The infrastructure already exists, the regulatory relationships have been established across numerous jurisdictions, and payment solutions continue improving. If the legal environment becomes more predictable, institutions may feel increasingly comfortable exploring blockchain-based financial systems at a much larger scale. Of course, optimism alone never guarantees market performance, but many XRP supporters argue that Ripple's preparation separates it from projects that still need years of development before becoming ready for widespread institutional adoption. That difference could eventually prove meaningful if demand accelerates following clearer regulation. Attention is now turning toward the upcoming legislative calendar. The Senate remains in recess until July 13th, while lawmakers continue working on revisions to the Clarity Act. Market participants expect further discussions later in July, with a possible Senate vote arriving in late July or early August. However, passing the legislation still requires 60 votes, meaning bipartisan cooperation remains essential. If lawmakers fail to reach agreement before Congress enters its August recess, additional delays could potentially push final action into the following legislative session. That uncertainty explains why investors continue monitoring every update coming from Washington. Regulatory developments often influence market sentiment even before laws officially take effect. While nobody can predict exactly when legislation will pass, many analysts believe every step toward clearer rules reduces long-term uncertainty for digital assets. Once again, XRP is testing that same area, and traders everywhere are asking the same question. Will this attempt finally produce the breakout that investors have been waiting months to see, or will resistance once again send prices back lower? That question now dominates technical discussions across the crypto market. Looking more closely at the chart helps explain why analysts are paying such close attention. Since last year's peak, XRP has consistently formed lower highs while also creating lower lows. Those price movements gradually produce two downward-sloping trend lines that continue squeezing closer together over time. Technical analysts recognize this formation as a falling wedge. While patterns never guarantee specific outcomes, the consistency of XRP's wedge has convinced many experienced traders that this technical structure deserves careful observation rather than being dismissed as random market noise. Volume has become another encouraging development supporting the recent recovery. During periods of heavy selling earlier this year, trading activity surged as investors rushed to exit positions. More recently, however, selling pressure gradually faded and daily trading volume became much quieter. Many analysts interpret that behavior as a sign that the majority of motivated sellers may already have left the market. Now, during the latest bounce, trading activity has accelerated dramatically. Daily XRP trading volume recently increased from roughly $400 million to more than $1.7 billion, representing more than a fourfold increase. Rising prices accompanied by rising volume generally provide stronger technical confirmation than price increases occurring on weak participation alone. Strong buying interest suggests that new market participants may be entering rather than existing holders simply pushing prices temporarily higher. Although confirmation remains incomplete, this significant increase in trading activity has certainly captured the attention of technical analysts across the cryptocurrency market. Despite these encouraging developments, not every technical indicator has fully confirmed the bullish case yet. One of the most closely watched momentum indicators remains the Relative Strength Index, commonly known as the RSI. At the moment, XRP's daily RSI continues hovering between approximately 32 and 37, remaining near oversold territory. That reading suggests the market is still recovering from previous selling pressure rather than demonstrating fully established upward momentum. Many experienced traders prefer seeing the RSI climb above 50 before declaring that bullish momentum has genuinely returned. Until that happens, caution remains appropriate. However, there is another encouraging detail worth mentioning. During late June, XRP continued making lower price lows while the RSI formed higher lows instead. Technical analysts call this pattern a bullish divergence because it indicates that selling pressure may be weakening even as prices continue declining. Although bullish divergences do not always produce rallies, they frequently appear before meaningful momentum shifts begin developing. Another important factor influencing XRP's outlook is the performance of Bitcoin. Historically, XRP has maintained a fairly strong relationship with the broader cryptocurrency market, particularly with Bitcoin's overall direction. When Bitcoin experiences sustained upward momentum, many alternative cryptocurrencies eventually follow. Recently, Bitcoin has been trading within a relatively narrow range, moving sideways rather than establishing a clear trend. This lack of decisive movement has created a neutral environment for XRP. Bitcoin has not generated enough strength to fully support an explosive breakout, but it has also avoided severe weakness that could undermine XRP's recovery. Many analysts believe a decisive Bitcoin move above major resistance levels would substantially improve XRP's probability of completing its own breakout. Conversely, renewed Bitcoin weakness could pressure the entire digital asset market, making it much more difficult for XRP to maintain upward momentum regardless of its individual technical setup. That relationship remains an important variable investors should continue monitoring. One additional challenge sits directly above XRP's current price, and it involves market psychology rather than complicated technical indicators. Blockchain data suggests that approximately 50 million XRP tokens were previously purchased between $1.18 and $1.22. Many of those investors are currently holding positions at a loss. If the market climbs back toward their original purchase prices, some may decide to sell simply to recover their investments. That creates a concentration of potential selling pressure directly above current prices. This same resistance area has already rejected XRP multiple times during previous rallies, including earlier this year when sellers successfully defended those levels. For any breakout to become sustainable, buyers will likely need enough strength to absorb that selling activity. Overcoming resistance is rarely easy because markets naturally encounter increased supply whenever previous investors finally receive opportunities to exit losing positions without taking financial losses. Even with those obstacles, technical analysts remain interested because XRP has already achieved one meaningful milestone. Earlier this month, the cryptocurrency successfully broke above a shorter-term descending trend line that had capped every recovery attempt since late May. More importantly, the breakout produced XRP's first higher high in several weeks, suggesting the previous pattern of continuously declining highs may finally be changing. While this shorter breakout does not automatically guarantee victory over the much larger year-long resistance line, it demonstrates that buyers are beginning to challenge bearish control more aggressively than before. Technical analysis often develops step by step rather than all at once. Smaller trend changes frequently appear before larger structural breakouts occur. If XRP can now overcome the primary resistance defining the top of the falling wedge, many analysts believe the overall technical picture would improve considerably compared with anything investors have witnessed during the past 12 months. Should that larger breakout eventually receive confirmation, technical price projections begin attracting significant attention. Analysts typically calculate falling wedge targets by measuring the widest portion of the pattern and projecting that distance upward from the breakout point. Using that traditional approach, the first objective falls near $1.50, representing roughly a 30% gain from current levels. If bullish momentum becomes even stronger, additional extension targets between $1.80 and $2.10 also enter consideration. These projections are not guarantees or promises. Instead, they represent historical measurement techniques commonly used by technical analysts around the world. Interestingly, long-term research conducted by respected chart analyst Thomas Bolkowski found that falling wedges eventually break upward approximately 68% of the time, with average gains following confirmed breakouts reaching around 38%. Those statistics explain why many traders continue watching XRP's current setup so closely, despite recognizing that no chart pattern succeeds every single time. Still, experienced investors understand that discipline remains essential. Historical research also shows that a meaningful percentage